Good afternoon. What's going on? Jimmy here in Chicago, rocking my Last Supper shirt. Hopefully, you guys are having a pretty good weekend. Getting ready to head out to the Greektown Fest. In Greektown, a lot of good food, beautiful women, music. They got it all. Check it out. What's going on today and tomorrow. So, today, we're going to talk about a making ceremony in the Chicago outfit. We're going to talk about a making ceremony that took place in the 50s, way back in the golden years of the Chicago mob. And then fast forward, we'll talk about the making ceremony that Joey Aiuppa and Al Tornabini held back in the early 70s. And then there was a third making ceremony shortly after that. So that's what we're going to talk about. I did a show on the making ceremony according to Nick Calabrese's testimony. I actually sat in court and heard word for word about that making ceremony. It was just like in the movies. So that's what we're going to talk about. But let's do a little housekeeping here. As always, if you're looking for a job or anybody you know wants to change their career, don't ever be afraid to use a headhunter or recruiter. Sometimes these guys get a bad rap. It costs you absolutely nothing as the job candidate. It's the employer, the company, pays them a fee based on if they provide them with a good employee. So they do everything in their power to match you, to prepare you for the job interview and for the job process. Whether you're looking for a job as an engineer, a maintenance guy, a salesman, check them out. Career Empower. Here's the link. Now, as I mentioned, I'm working on a new podcast. It's going to be called Father's Rights. Here's my guy, Donald Kamek. Donald grew up with a lot of the legends of the Chicago mob, men like John DeFranzo. He used to sell cars. He told me he learned a lot from Johnny DeFranzo. He also spent a lot of time with legendary Chicago policeman Bill Hanhart. Donnie's good friends with a lot of the rock stars as well. So he's going to come on. He's going to talk about, he's going to be my first guest, my first father. He's going to talk about a brutal divorce that he went through. And then I'm going to bring up other fathers who went through all kinds of drama with their ex-wives and baby mamas, because fathers do have rights and they need to change some of these laws. If you guys have any issues with divorces or baby mama drama and you feel your rights as a father are being denied or falling on deaf ears in court, reach out to me. So aside from my Father's Rights podcast, I'm also going to have I'm working on doing a story with this gentleman who I met recently at the Taylor Street Fest, Rico Panoni. Hopefully I'm not butchering your name, Rico, but this man is a legend. His resume is impressive. And if him and I could ever get down in the studio and do a proper podcast, it's platinum. His stories are platinum. He used to work for John DiArco in the very powerful First Ward. He was close with Harry Ellman and a lot of the other guys from the Wild Bunch. And he was a master in martial arts. So hopefully I can get him on. Him and I are in the early stages. And like he says to me, slow and steady. So stay tuned for that. And now we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about, according to Mitch Mars, Marcus Funk, and John Scully, the government's three-headed prosecutor who went after the defendants at the Family Secrets trial. These guys are some of the best prosecutors in the business, right? According to them, when they had Joe Lombardo on the stand, Mitch Mars said that this photo here, the reason for this photo is that this was the making ceremony of Joe Lombardo. You could see Joey standing there with a drink. He's the only one wearing a seat. And when they asked Joey to explain how did he end up taking a photo with all the bosses of the Chicago mob, Joey replied, and I'll never forget it, he said he was at a friend's funeral. He had a taste for a nice roast beef sandwich. So he went to this restaurant and he saw all the fellas there. They invited him over for a drink. And then somebody, I forget who it was, actually took this famous photo. Years later, when they raided a mob guy's house, they found a copy of this photo on his dresser. But when the prosecutor took Joey through the photo around the table, he denied knowing all the men in the photo, except Joey Aiuppa and Tony Ricardo. He said they were swell fellas, good golfers, and pretty good fishermen. But he denied knowing James Turk Torello. He referred to him as the fat guy. Cesar DeVarco, he said he never met Cesar, never laid eyes on him. Mitch Marr says, well, that's not true because you and him had beef over the years. He denied knowing Black Joe Arnold, Northwestern capo. He said he was the caddy of Jack Cerrone. He denied knowing El Palato, boss of Chicago Heights crew. He denied knowing Vince Solano, boss of the Gold Coast Rush Street crew at the time. And he said that the reason they had the photo, that Joey said it was a going away party for Dominic DeBella. Joey said, look how skinny, look how small he is. Meaning this man was about to die. So they had a kind of like a going away party for him. And Joey denied being the boss of the Grand Avenue crew. He denied taking an oath. He said he never took an oath and pricked his finger and swore any allegiance to any organization. He said that George Bush, Dick Cheney had a bigger crew, that those are the men that should be on trial. But this is a legendary photo. And according to the government, this was the day Joe Lombardo was made. And again, I'm wearing that shirt. Check it out. Now we'll keep going. Now, according to sources, right, people in the know, Jack Cerrone, I think he was an Elmwood Park guy, classy dresser, Joe Batter's personal driver, Aiuppa's right-hand man, went away, got pinched during the straw man indictment for skimming 4 mobbed-up hotel casinos. A lot of funny stories about this guy, Jack. His son, I think, became a good lawyer, top lawyer. But according to certain sources, he was made in an actual church. Now, if anybody can confirm that, please let me know. I'd like to know where that church was and what year. Now, I did a story on this. One of the many highlights at the Family Secret Trial is when Nick Calabrese testified about a real making ceremony. It was straight out of a fucking movie. And Nick Calabrese testified that back in, I think it was 1972, Joey Dubs Aiuppa, boss of the Chicago mob at the time, he led the making ceremony, along with this guy here, the pizza man, Al Tornabini. Now, a lot of people never even heard of this old dinosaur. He was talked about quite a bit during the Family Secrets trial. But according to Nick, each guy was called in the room one by one. And on the table was a gun, and I'm sure that gun was loaded. If anybody got out of line, a knife, and a prayer card. Nick Calabrese said Aiuppa asked him a series of questions. He pricked his finger with blood, made Nick repeat an oath, and then he took a holy card, a prayer card, and burned it in Nick's hand. And Nick had to repeat that oath, I think, 3 times. straight out of the movies. You could hear a pin drop when Nick was talking about the making ceremony. Now, these are the men, according to Nick Calabrese, that were made that day. You had brother Jimmy, Angelo Petria's brother. You had John Feccarata was made that day. Johnny DeFranzo was made that day. Sam Carlisi was there to sponsor a couple of his guys. Guys like little Jimmy Marcello, even though he was half Italian, half Irish, men's, like myself. He got made that day. Joaquin Felice sponsored a couple guys from his crew. You had Anthony Zizzo, who's MIA today, missing in action today. Anthony Zizzo, Little Toe Zizzo, was made that day, along with his buddy Jimmy Marcello. Angelo Petri was there to sponsor his guys, right? His brother, Frank Calabrese Sr., Nick Calabrese Jr., El Taco, Vince Solano sponsored a couple of his guys. You had Pudgy, Toots Palumbo. And that's a lot of heavyweights that were made that day. And shortly after that, they had another making ceremony, but I don't remember where it was. If anybody knows, let me know. Probably at a restaurant or a bar. Jimmy DeForty was actually became a made guy, along with Anthony the Hatch, Petey DeFranzo, Jerry Scarpelli, Rudy Frotto. Nick testified that he explained the membership was a lifetime membership. You're in for life, and the only way out is feet first. So that was the making ceremony that Nick Calabrese testified in Family Secret Trial. I did a prior video on that you guys could check out. Now we're going to go back to probably one of the very first making ceremonies. Went back to 1956. This is a guy you never even hear about. Vincent the Saint and Cyril. Made member of the Chicago outfit. And according to an FBI informant, according to a rat, a snitch, the following men were present. You had Joe Ferriola, was made that day. His sponsor was Fifi Biocchiori. Who else was made that day in 1956? James Algaretti. Sponsored by Russ Prio. To his left was Dick Kane. Now, Dick Kane was he was actually a double agent, right under Sam Giancana, close with James Roselli, both of them murdered by the Chicago outfit. And I'll never forget the story right there in the neighborhood when they found out that he was a double agent. He was at Jimmy Cozo's cafe right there on Grand Avenue, Grand and May, right across the street from the bakery by the old Survivor Social Club. Two masked gunmen walked in, announced a stick up. They had a guy on the roof. They had a guy on walkie-talkie on outside as lookout. They walked up to Dick Kane and blew his head off with a shotgun. That's New York style. That had the Wild Bunch MO all over it. Broad daylight, witnesses, ski mask shotguns. Lead shooters were Marshall Cafone, Joe Lombardo, Harry Ailman, and another guy I'm forgetting. But Ross Prio was at that 1956 making ceremony. And I have a feeling that Richard Kane was the government's informant. Just like nobody heard of the 1972 making ceremony that Nick Calabrese took part in, because until Nick Calabrese informed, he flipped, he cooperated. Government had no idea about these making ceremonies until the informants came forward. Who else was there? You got this guy, Skids Caruso. He became made way back in 1956. Also another guy they called Pineapples. He was made that day in 1966 as well. Joseph Pineapples Eldorado. He was under the Fifi Buccieri's crew, along with Ferriola. He had a couple other guys from Chicago Heights that were made, 3 to 4 guys. Some of Caruso's guys, a couple other guys in his crew were made, 3 to 4 guys, probably maybe Marcy, Pat Rohde, or Fred Rohde rather. So that was a smaller making ceremony, but a lot of heavyweights. Most of those guys ended up in prison. Some of them got killed. Some of them flipped. Some of them died in jail. But now I want to share my screen with you. I want to show you another quick clip of some of the ball busting that goes on at these social clubs. I'm going to try to get one out to you at least once a month. So let me share my screen. One second here. Bear with me, guys. Hang on, guys. 1 second. All right, here we go. Ready?
Oh, come on with the burning. I can smell it now.
Hang on. Let me try that again. Damn, guys, sorry, I'm having technical difficulty. I'm going to show you my friend Anthony, a Taylor Street guy, who grew up with a lot of these mustache guys. Here's him at the club where they're busting balls. Watch this. Let's try it again. This should work. It's my friend Anthony. Look at what they did. With his fucking foot on fire. Watch. Wasn't the first time either.
Oh, come on with the burning. I can smell it now.
Can you imagine the ball busting that goes on at these clubs? But let's recap really quick before I let you guys go. Again, if you're looking for a job or a new career, check out Career Empower, one of the best recruiters in the city of Chicago. Stay tuned for my Father's Rights podcast with my good friend Donald. Donald's also going to tell some never heard before stories about some guys like Bill Hanhard, Rocky Lombardo, the Petit brothers, some of his other guys he grew up with, as well as some of his rock and roll stories. So stay tuned for that interview. That's going to be a good one. And then again, I'm working on a real serious podcast with my guy Rico. We're going to do it in a professional studio with the proper lighting, background cameras. We'll have a producer there. It's going to be really something. His stories are platinum. So stay tuned for that. As I mentioned before, according to the government, I don't know if this is true. This photo, Joe Lombardo, this was the day that Joey was made. This was when he became a made member of the Chicago outfit and an official boss of the Grand Avenue crew. This was somewhere in the 1970s. This photo was taken. Now they say that Jack Cerrone was made inside a church. Same thing. I'm not so sure about that. If anybody has got any receipts on that, let me know. But according to the government's star witness at the family secrets trial, Nick went into great detail. He took part in a making ceremony in 1972, I think it was, where it was held by Ayupa, El Tornabini, just like in the movies, with the gun, the knife, the prayer card. Nick Calabrese said he pricked his finger, and then he had to repeat an oath they burnt a holy card in his hand. Frank Calabrese said afterwards that he felt a little nervous with that burning prayer card in his hand. Now just think about that. All the murders Frank Calabrese participated on, this kind of made him a little uneasy. And then afterwards, this man here, Angelo the Bull LaPetria, he told Nick Calabrese and Frank Calabrese when they went out for coffee afterwards, he told them, you have a little insurance. Not much, but a little. But that's what kind of prick this guy was. He even asked Nick, would you like to take part in the membership? Kind of testing Nick. Nick knew if he said no, he would have been killed that day. But this is Angelo the Bull. He was talked about quite a bit at the family secrets trial. And I heard from a good source that the day he died, they took the picture off the wall. They took his picture off the wall at the club, and everybody took turns stomping on it. That's how much they hated this guy. But he took part in the making ceremony that day, and he sponsored Nick Calabrese, Frank Calabrese, his brother brother Jimmy, and maybe one or two other guys from the Chinatown crew. Government alleges, and I don't know if this is true, maybe according to a couple of those rats and snitches and fucking lowlifes, guys like BJ Jehoda, Lenny Patrick, Mark Hale, Kyle Knight, Junior Calabrese, James Lavelli. I mean, the list goes on and on. But according to a government informant, claims that Sal De Laurentiis was made at the Como Inn, right there in the Grand in Milwaukee neighborhood, one of the best old school Italian restaurants in the city. All the wise guys used to go here back in the day. I'm not so sure if that's true, but they say Sally D became a made member here. And then going back, right? Was it 1956? One of the first making ceremonies. You had Vincent the Saint. There's his rap sheet, his actual mugshot, fingerprints. There's Vinny the Saint. Looks like a pretty happy guy. He was a short guy, but very, very strong. I met his grandson at the Taylor Street Fest at Pompeii. Joe Ferriola was made that day, 1956, sponsored by this legend here. You got Fifi. You got Jimmy Algaretti, sponsored by Ross Prio. There's Dick Kane. I think Dick Kane was the informant, because an informant is the one that talked about some of the members that were made that day. You had Caruso, a couple other guys from the Chicago Heights crew were there, a couple other guys from 26th Street crew were made that day. You got Joey Crackers. You gotta love these nicknames. Medino. Joe Eldorado. Joey Pineapples was made as well. But they actually had real making ceremonies, right? Just like in the movies. With the gun on the table, the knife, blood. But again, we're going by the informants. Sometimes it's hard to believe 100% what these guys are saying. But that's it. That's my story for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Just wanted to share with you a quick making story. If you guys like it, hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. And for you haters out there, get out there, man. Grab the old lady. Take her to fucking, I don't know, take her to maybe Outback. Treat her real nice to, I don't know, one of those shitty restaurants that you guys go to. Ciao.